Out of schools and a flashpoint issue, how to teach and discuss race in America's classrooms. Tonight, we look at our children's history lessons and the curricula at the center of controversy. Here's ABC's Janai Norman.
Laughing. That's funny.
Tonight's Rochester School Board meeting turned into a confrontation about teaching race theory.
Dozens of parents believe DEI programming is critical race theory.
Critical race theory, 3 words, 1 idea, igniting a firestorm. With kids going back to school amid a painful racial reckoning, efforts to push for a more critical look at our nation called unpatriotic by opponents.
They want to teach that America is bad, and they want to indoctrinate their kids.
But despite passionate pleas from parents for and against CRT, the historians and educators we spoke to agree that CRT, a higher education coursework, isn't being taught in classrooms. Instead, the term has become shorthand for the debate around diversity and equity initiatives in schools.
What is CRT?
It began in law schools in the late 1970s. And it was started mostly by African-American law professors. They reanalyzed law in other institutions and tried to argue that racism and racist history was baked into those institutions.
I mean, that's not what kids are learning in elementary or middle school.
No, as far as I know, there's no 4th grade teacher that's ever gotten up one morning and said, like, "Good morning, children. Today we're going to study critical race theory." But in some districts, perspectives borrowed from CRT have been shared and discussed.
States like Nevada, California, and Nebraska moving to include what they call culturally responsive materials in their curriculum. And Washington State recently requiring ethnic studies materials, which reflect the perspectives of people of color, to be available in K-12 schools. It's in Seattle. We meet with self-proclaimed anti-racist high school educator Jesse Hagopian as he prepares to teach a citywide Black Studies course he helped launch last year. Jesse says anti-racist teaching shouldn't be controversial.
Students need to be able to understand the many different causes of structural racism and to be able to question, to talk back to their textbooks.
If kids are starting to have these conversations in school, they are learning how to have civilized conversations in which they are disagreeing, but working through those.
They're talking about it in the hallways. They're talking about it on the school bus. And the question for educators is, are we going to allow those conversations to come into the classroom and have safe and structured conversations that provide historical context?
But in Loudoun County, Virginia, AP government teacher Monica Gill says this approach is creating a divide among students.
They're being encouraged to discriminate against each other. They're being encouraged to look at each other as oppressed or oppressor based on skin color. And this is no way to do education.
She's not alone. Those concerns reaching the halls of state legislatures. 8 states enacted laws this year to regulate classroom instruction centered around race, and similar bills have been proposed in several other states.
Some want to teach New Hampshire children that America is a hateful place with a hateful history.
In New Hampshire, ads like these opposing critical race theory.
Paid for by 1776 Action.
1776 Action, an activist group inspired by former President Trump's 1776 Commission, created in part in response to the New York Times 1619 Project.
Nobody has an issue, anyone that I know of, in this movement of, not teaching bad parts of history, not teaching about race and racism. It's this divisiveness of pitting kids against one another based upon things like skin color and gender.
Some opponents also citing concerns about what they consider a rewriting of history, like the Texas Revolution.
And you will always remember the Alamo.
The story of the Alamo, celebrated in the iconic 1960 film. But a new book called Forget the Alamo collects years of historic scholarship that it was a battle not just for freedom, but for the preservation of slavery.
And so the defenders of the Alamo have become, these martyrs for a cause, are really looking at it from actual historical fact not heroes.
Professor Christopher Carmona teaches high school students in a predominantly Hispanic border town in Texas. He says the Alamo legends are a reason he fought to get Mexican-American studies into classrooms.
When someone sees themselves not reflecting or only reflecting in a negative capacity, they start to internalize that.
School curriculums are now at the center of an age-old debate recently reignited. How should students learn American history?
The history classroom has to be in conversation with what's going on in society for it to be relevant.
Sam Weinberg is the head of Stanford University's History Education Group and founded the Reading Like a Historian Project, the largest provider of free social studies resources.
Our history curriculum is a curriculum where students learn the past, not because they're spectators to it, but because they have an opportunity to engage in its remaking.
And how do you do that?
Students have to put the evidence together for themselves and come up with an interpretation that makes sense to them rather than repeating somebody else's story.
The experts and teachers we spoke with agreed that history teachers have a unique responsibility to help the next generation learn from the past to forge a better future.
What would people say about the German school system saying because teaching about the Holocaust makes young people feel uncomfortable, German schools are no longer going to teach the Holocaust?
Kids at a very young age are aware of race, and they want to talk about race. It's the adults that feel uncomfortable and don't know how to talk about it.
This is an emotional subject, but at the same time, I don't think you can or should use that fact to prevent the dialogue that we need.
Janai Norman, ABC News, Seattle.
Certainly a provocative conversation. Our thanks to Janai Norman for that.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.